Hello, my name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to take a look at the product and also the quotient property or properties of exponents. And so why don't we go ahead and take a look at this. So when we're talking about exponents, we're talking about that little, I guess you can call it a superscript that goes above the number. So an example of that would be, 2 to the third power or something like that. And so this guy right here at the top is called the exponent. And of course, this number down here is called the base. This will become even more important when we look at logarithms. Now, there are certain properties for a product. And remember, when we talk about a product in mathematics, we're almost always talking about multiplication. And so for the product property, it's very, very simple. When you have, let's just say A is my base, times A, like so. This is my base, and then let's say M here is my exponent and N is my exponent. The actual product of these is A, so the base does not change when it's the same. Then up here you do M plus N. That's kind of how it works out. You would add together the exponents. In other words, when you are multiplying two numbers that have the same base, or two or more numbers that have the same base, and they both have exponents, you simply add the exponents across and you don't mess with the base. So let's just do a couple examples of this in a practical manner. So our first example here is that we have x to the fifth power times x to the sixth power. Well, that's not too hard to figure out. We have the same base each time, so that does not change. And then we simply have 5 plus 6, and this will just simplify to x to the 11th power. Not that hard. A couple more if you don't mind. And so the next one, 3 to the x times 3 to the 4x. Well, again, that's not that hard. The base stays the same, as you should already be familiar with. So we have 3 again. Then we have x plus 4x. And this simplifies to 3 to the 5x power. Very, very simple here. Now the next one, it's a little bit more advanced, if you will. Let's see here. So in our next one, we have 2y to the sixth power times 4y. So what is that going to be? Now this time, we have a different base. We have a 2 and we have a 4. Well, just have to put on our thinking cap here. Different base, you multiply them. So 2 times 4. And then we also have our, let's see here. We have our y to the 6 and our y to the 1. So we multiply y to the 6 plus y to the 1. And all this simplifies to something very, very simple. So 2 times 4 is going to be 8. And then y 6 plus 1 is going to be y to the 7. And so that's how that works out. So when the base is different, you multiply like any other number. But when the bases are same, you only add the exponents. This is kind of how the product property rule works for exponents. Now, we're going to move now to quotients. And quotients have to do with dividing. When you divide two numbers, the result is a quotient, or that's how they call it. So now the rule here depends on whether the numerator is bigger than the denominator, or whether the denominator is bigger than the numerator. So let's take a look at this real quick. So we have our a to the m divided by a to the n. Now, when this happens, again, let me clarify, you subtract you find the difference between the numerator and the denominator when, now this is important, when the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Now, let's say the denominator is bigger than the numerator. The rule is slightly different, significantly different, if you will. So again, if we have a to the m over a to the n, this time you're going to have 1 over a to the n minus m. Now, when do you do this? When the denominator is bigger than the numerator. That's the rule. So when you're trying to figure out how to subtract, you have to keep in mind whether the numerator or the denominator is the larger number. And that will affect how you work out the multiplication. So let's do an example real quick. A couple examples. I think I have two here. Yes, two examples. So we got x to the 10 over x to the 7. Let me make that better. Okay, x to the 7. Now in this particular situation, it is clear that 10 is bigger than 7. 10 is the numerator, 7 is the denominator. So we have x 10 minus 7. Let me just look this way. And so we end up with x to the third power, like so. Because 10 minus 7 is 3. Because in that situation, the numerator was larger than the denominator. So we have this situation, we use this expression. Now, wrapping this up, I'll show you the opposite real quick. And so the next one, we have b to the 7th power over b to the 12th power. Now in this situation, it is very, very clear that the numerator is larger than the denominator. So what ends up happening is that I have, let me just make the color a little bit different here. I end up being 1 over b to the 12th power minus 7. And what I end up having at the end, I hope you can see this down in the corner, it's kind of small, but please bear with me. I end up having 1b to the 5th power as my answer. Because this time we use this second expression because, like I just explained to you, the denominator was larger than the numerator. So this is the situation for dealing with product properties for exponents and also quotient properties for exponents. Basically, how you deal with this depends on the situation. If you're dealing with products, when you're multiplying numbers together, what you have to keep in mind is if the base is the same, don't change it. And then all you do is you add the exponents together to get the final answer. However, if the bases are different, like in my example here at the bottom, 2 and 4, you multiply the bases and then you add the exponents like normal. When you're dealing with the quotients, when you're dividing something by exponents, again in this situation, if the bases are the same, you don't change them. However, if there is, you also have to keep in mind the the numerator and the denominator, because whether the numerator is bigger or whether the denominator is bigger influences what type of expression you use. That's important to keep in mind. So I hope this video was useful for you as you were looking at how to deal with product and also quotients when you're dealing with exponents. My name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Take care.